What is up, everybody? I hope you guys are doing well. Welcome into the Fit CEO podcast by Chad Molyneux. Today, we have our first ever guest on the podcast. Her name is Kendall Strample. I feel like you guys already know Kendall, but I'm going to give Kendall the floor for a quick introduction of herself. Go ahead, dude.
Yo, what's up, guys? Wow, I'm honored. The first guest. Well, guys, my name is Kendall Strample, otherwise known as fearstofit. Most people just call me that. I am an online fitness coach. I have a fitness coaching team of 6 coaches. We have about 300 women across our team. I'm also a online business coach, so I help mainly new coaches up and coming get their systems in place, strategies in place. And yeah, I reside over in the wonderful San Diego, California, 22 years old. And
Let's go.
just here to give you guys some support. Any nuggets that you take away from this hopefully are useful.
Young hustler. I love it. You and I both, which is awesome. So those that are listening, you guys know my style. We just dive right into it and we just try to give you guys as much nuggets as possible. What we're going to be talking about today, and part of the reason we brought Kendall on is we're going to be talking about content, but we're not just talking about content. We're talking about content that actually brings you in clients, right? Because a lot of people talk about content, but they don't talk about how to make content convert into clients. So the first question I have for you, Kendall, is what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see with content creation?
Yeah, definitely. This is a really good question because I think I could sit here for an hour, but I'll cover like maybe the top 2 that I see. So the first thing that I really see across the board with content is I'm actually a really big proponent, especially in the fitness coaching space, of having a really solid mixture of both educational content as well as personalized content. I think nowadays there's so much just vanilla bullshit that I see in the coaching space where it's just a lot of the same thing being done over and over again. And for the most part, it's like what makes you better than the next coach. And so that's definitely one of the biggest problems that I see is just kind of like everyone chasing each other around in circles, following trends rather than setting their own trend and setting themselves apart. I think the second thing that I would say is a lot of the times coaches aren't posturing themselves in their content at all. I don't think a lot of people really realize that your sale starts in your content. It really, really does. And I think a lot of people are terrified to establish themselves as an authority with their content and actually telling people like, hey, I'm a coach. This is what I do. This is my team. This is what we're about. So I'd say if I could list off like the top 2, that would for sure be what those would be.
Dude, that's huge. I'm actually going to elaborate on a few of those. I've been talking a lot about this in the NLCA, but entertainment is what sells. That's why TikTok works. That's why Reels work. And I feel like so many coaches are trying to create content that sounds good to other coaches. And they're talking about all this like really deep scientific stuff that just goes like way over their ideal client's head. Another one that I really liked that you mentioned was the sales aspect, right? I agree. Content starts with sales, but a lot of people think it also ends with sales too. They think that all they have to do is make a post and clients are going to come. And then they're like, oh, wait, what the heck? No clients are coming. So if you want to expand a little bit on the sales side of things and how you can actually posture yourself to make content sell, that would be awesome.
For sure. So if you guys don't know my backstory, I started my Instagram back in 2015. It was actually like a random foodie account that I was actually using for accountability from an eating disorder recovery. And so I actually just shared so much of my own journey. And this is kind of speaking more into the first point, but I shared just a lot of my own journey. And I think that's what really made people resonate with me as a person, like literally as a human being, not as like a coach or anything like that. It was just more of a connection between us. And I think for the most part, as I transitioned, as I got a little bit older and I realized that coaching was something that I wanted to do, I accidentally like fell into creating content that converted. I didn't even really realize it. And one of the things I actually started doing back in, I believe it was late 2016, early 2017, was I was in-person training and I started posting my personal training sessions and talking about them in captions because back then stories weren't even a thing. And so it was actually in like the captions of my content. And so I started telling people more about the fact that I was a coach and I would dig into the ideal client pain points back then even. I recognized that a lot of the clients that I worked with were coming from a restrictive background. And so my thought process was always, how can I speak to her today? What is she struggling with? And she is my ideal client, right? And a lot of the times I would think back to okay, what was I struggling with? Even things that come up in my day that we have to think at the baseline as a coach. It's thinking, okay, this is easy to me. I do this every day, but what does somebody who's brand new to their journey or have this past not know about these steps that I'm taking? Is as simple as weighing out food on a food scale. And I would constantly be talking about those pain points that I noticed would come up throughout my day to my ideal client. And that essentially started posturing me, I think, as somebody who was educating, right? But as you I know, Chad, you probably know a lot of people who probably have my story. If you guys know me, I'm like the biggest weirdo. I don't talk like your average person. And so I would always throw a little bit more personality into it, but I always made sure people would still know, no matter what, that I was a coach. And that just came down to speaking about those pain points and then honestly putting my offer out there. Like that's the biggest thing with your content. It's all of the posturing. It's all about people buying into either you or the education that you can provide to them. And I think for me, when I started to realize back then, my like 18-year-old self was more of a dopamine spike because the algorithms didn't exist. So I was like, ooh, I'm getting lots of likes and I'm getting lots of comments. And so I would recognize, oh, that's working. This is working. People are sending me DMs about this. And really kind of following suit with like, how can I continue to expand on these pain points and tell people I'm a coach so they reach out to me more, which I know DM outreach wasn't even that popular back then, but I realized that's what was really working and that's what was posturing me best.
I love it. Yeah, the best teachers are entertainers and educators, and that sounds like what you were leaning into. I have two follow-up questions that are actually going off script on what you said. So you mentioned that you always said that you're a coach, and I feel like there's a lot of people that are creating content right now that are afraid to talk about their offer or afraid to say that they're even a coach. What would you recommend to somebody on how to overcome that?
Yeah, I always say lead with service, right? If you believe that your sole purpose with coaching is to change somebody's life, I always, it's almost like a guilt trip into myself, but I would tell myself, who am I to take away that opportunity from somebody? I've created this amazing program. And let's say you are a newer coach listening to this and you don't have a quote unquote, I'm air quotes program, but you know that you can offer accountability and just support to somebody, then it's your obligation and it's your duty. This is what you want to do and this is the purpose that you have in life to continue to serve people. And if you want to serve people, you will show up for those people. And I think that for me was like the basis and the foundation of what really prompted me to like always want to speak to my ideal client and speak about my coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've had conversations. This leads actually perfectly into my next question. I know we've had conversations off air about people getting really specific with their ideal client. Is there a detriment to thinking about your ideal client while creating content?
Yeah, I love that you asked me this because I don't know, I'm really grateful that you semi agree with like the whole thing that I
Oh,
kind
I
of,
fully agree.
yeah, like what we talked about is I think so many like especially business coaches, but just harp on people needing to have this super lucrative, super niched down ideal client to the point where you're just like maybe not even feeling, and I'm super woo woo, but you know, just like not feeling in alignment with it to the point where you don't even know what to say. I think you can start off a little bit more broad. Like think about what you went through. Think about some of the big pain points that as a coach you may have struggled with. And you can always expand on those as you start to build more credibility and do market research. Figure out what that reoccurring pattern is because honestly, with your personality and what you share as a coach, you're going to attract certain people. And those reoccurring pain points will just keep coming up and keep coming up. And I think, you know, when it comes down to it, you can start off more broad. And if you find yourself, you know, swaying towards a niche, I'm just going to give a quick example. One of my assistant coaches, we noticed that just like so many of her clients were like either military teachers or nurses. And we're like, okay, so you help like service providers, people who provide service. And it was just like a reoccurring theme that we noticed, but she never purposely targeted them, but she did talk a lot about stress and busy schedules. So we're like, huh, okay, cool. It happened over time. It's an evolution of a niche, really. And so, you know, I don't think it's one thing to harp on it for too long. I think it'll evolve over time for sure.
Dude, I love that. So basically, what you're saying is you don't need to start with somebody very specific. Talk about things that get you excited, talk about things you're passionate about, and then over time, it's going to build itself. I think that's great. Next question I have, we're going to go a different direction here, but a lot of people struggle with the management aspect of creating content. And obviously, you're extremely consistent with what you do. What are some tips that you have for people in terms of creating content and staying on top of it?
Yeah, I think it's finding your flow, honestly. I actually had a huge block with this back in 2019 where I would actually spend like a week of not posting. And I found a lot of it was because I kept trying to do all the things that all the other influencers back then were doing. I also was in this awkward space between wanting to be a coach and an influencer. And when I got really stiff in the fact that I was like, hey, I'm here to provide a service. So I'm going to serve my ideal client and I'm going to serve my people. I think there's a few things that you have to do when looking to make sure you have enough content for, a week or 2 weeks, let's say in advance, is have, honestly, this is something that I really value is I love looking at cohesive feeds that have some kind of theme to them, whether it's like real video picture, graphic picture, reel, like whatever that looks like. I think that in itself really helps with keeping a cohesive feed, but also not putting so much pressure to be like, crap, today do I need to get a picture randomly? Like, do I need to get video? So that already alone will help you plan, even a week in advance. Do what the hell you need to do to get the content. If it's asking your boyfriend to take a picture of you, if it's what I just started doing, renting out gym space because I really love doing form fix videos and swipe videos. That's kind of what, I do for a lot of my fitness coaching. So I think if you can find a theme and then honestly, like really plan on like your Sunday or a day in advance, even if you do one photo shoot a month with a photographer, or it could just be a friend, it could be a selfie in your bed, like, in one of your bedrooms with a blank wall behind you, just,
Yeah.
getting the content. I think the pictures is really important. So that's more like the actual like post side of things. When it comes to what you want to be talking about, personally for the FTF community, we actually pick a theme for the month. And I've actually found that helps so much because if you pick one theme, think about the mindset aspect, the training aspect, the nutrition aspect, the macro aspect, whatever that looks like. There's a million different captions you can write about one theme and expand on. So I've actually found that that's helped us with batching content ahead of time, and writing out those captions. If anyone has writer's block, the best place to turn is either your audience or your current clients for any questions on themes that you might want to talk about too. So that's what I found works really well for me.
Dude, 100%. Yeah, I used to be the random poster, and now I've had a theme. Not only has the Instagram grown, but it's much easier for me to just wake up and say, all right, this is what I'm doing today, and not even have to really second guess myself or think about it. You said something interesting. You said that there was a pivotal moment for you where you were deciding between being an influencer and a business owner. For people that are on the fence with that same decision, why did you go business owner?
So I'll just give you guys like a little bit of insight is if you guys also, again, just don't know my profile, I currently have like, I think 261,000 followers, but back in 2020, in the beginning of 2020, I actually had 287,000 followers.
Wow.
So like I've lost what, 26,000 followers now.
Yeah.
I really don't care to be honest, just to be frank, but I've also 5x to my business. So in that time being. So because I gave up wanting to just get, a $500 a month sponsorship and like brand deals, which I absolutely adore the brands that I work with. Like I love them to my core, but I recognize that this isn't going to be how I'm going to serve more people in the world. And so I recognize that actually there was no correlation with me gaining a following and having a bigger business. In fact, the more I lost followers and focused on service-based content, the more my business grew, my income grew, and my team grew. And that was the most important thing to me, was I really had to drop my ego, honestly, because I was really found myself seeking validation in like likes and follows. And I recognized how toxic of a behavior and like thought process that was for myself too. And yeah, when you're service-based, it really takes off. So I noticed that and just kept going with it.
Dude, I'm so thankful that I never like hit the algorithm or got a big following because it really forces you to like develop skills, right? And nobody can take skills away from you, but your following, it could be gone tomorrow. Who knows? Instagram gets wiped up. You got to go to a different platform. So, anybody that is trying to make that decision, when you are a business owner, it's in your control, right? And it's a lot more sustainable than, like you said, trying to rely on another brand to pay you a couple $100 to post about their whatever it may be. So getting back to content here, and I want to start talking about the posturing that you were mentioning earlier. For people that don't know, what does that even mean?
Yeah, so the way that you are posturing yourself is essentially the way that you are presenting yourself to your audience so that they can see exactly what it is that you do, right? Are you postured as an authority to them? Are you postured as a coach to them? Or are you postured more as an influencer, right? So just to give you guys some examples to kind of run off of that. I think some people do a very amazing job at this. Some people posture themselves as a highly educated and mainly factual based coach. Others posture themselves as like the fun, loving, happy coach who brings the best vibes, which ultimately like raises your, habit shifts and things like that.
I thought of Sarah for some reason when you said that.
Yes, literally, exactly. Yes, exactly. So, and just if you don't mind me expanding on this too, Chad, I was 18 when I started my business, and a lot of people didn't take me seriously. And I'm actually really passionate about like ageism in the coaching space because I've found it actually be something a little bit more prevalent, especially because I do coach a lot of younger coaches. And for me personally, I wasn't going to let that get in the way. So I had to do a lot when I was 18 to like really posture myself a little bit, actually even older, to the point where I like used to like not even really tell people my age and things like that. That's where I got really passionate about like how people have to posture themselves online to really like build this business for themselves.
Yeah, to what degree? That's an interesting point. To what degree, with the ageism thing, is fake it till you make it come into play there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously, I think education is huge, right? Someone who's younger generally has less experience. I'm not I'm not really big on the whole fake it till you make it thing. I think you should be pouring your passions into learning and mentorship. If you are at that point where you are feeling like you are faking it, because inevitably, if you are faking it the entirety of the time, you're not going to feel the best probably about what you are doing either, which is also a really important aspect of showing up.
100%. I love it. You just like hit it right in the face. Cool. So we talked about posturing. The next thing I want to talk about is content to conversations, right? Because the posturing leads into the conversation. So you mentioned earlier in the podcast that you posted specific things that led to people reaching out to you. Let's start there.
Yeah, this is great. So Chad knows this, but I hated DM outreach. I used to hate DM outreach. It's actually like
Most
90.
people do.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually like 90% of how I generate all my leads across the board nowadays, which most people don't think because I do have a larger following. But all the techniques that I teach my students are the techniques that I now like use. And so the biggest thing is when it comes down to it, I noticed one of the bigger gaps, which is honestly, Chad, why I wanted to talk about this today. One of the bigger gaps is a lot of people will, do market research on their stories or like send out DMs initially. And then they bring people to their page and there isn't a lot there to see. So this kind of goes both ways. It's like, how do we get people to message you first? But it's also like when you're messaging people first, how are you actually getting them to be attracted to you as a coach? And I think that's a really big problem just in general with what I see with newer coaches. So I say just kind of starting off with that first point where it's like, how do you maybe get people to initially message you first? Start talking about the things that you know that they're probably struggling with, people who are currently watching your stories. Bring up, break myths. That's a big one. Breaking myths in the fitness space is huge, and think outside the box. Like, when it comes down to it, I'm sure you see this, Chad, but everyone doing the same, like, don't eat after 7, like, the same myths over and over. Like, dig deeper, do your research, figure out what your ideal client is struggling with or your audience is struggling with, and it will prompt them for questions. Also, people love chaos and they love controversy. If you start talking about chaos that happens in your day-to-day life, it is so funny, but I got the most DMs ever when I busted my MacBook. I'm just like, really, guys? Really? Like,
I saw
so
something the other day. You were talking about like going into the gym and like an old high school kid was there, and you're like, should I talk to him? Should I not talk to him?
It's so funny. It's so funny. But it's like so many people, like they reach out for like the smallest things, you know. Um,
It relates.
yeah.
That's why.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's that's what I've noticed in terms of getting like the initial DM. As far as it goes with getting people once you have people in your, or you're sending out maybe even cold messages, because I know a lot of people do cold outreach. We do a lot of cold outreach. Um, with cold outreach, when it comes down to it, I think it's one of those things where like if someone's coming to your page, you better have a story post up for them to see what you're about, how you speak, the diction you use, the vocabulary that you use. Can they vibe with that? Are you their coach? I can tell you right now, some people will probably come to my page and be like, hell no, I'm not a dude, bro, sis. I don't talk like that. That's cool. It's all good. They're just not my people. You know, but then also at the same time, what do your highlight reels look like? Is your content speaking to that person? If they go to any of the pictures in your last like 6 to 9 pictures, are they going to resonate with one of them? You only get one first impression. And I think that's what's really important about your actual Instagram profile.
Yeah, 100%. I just want to expand on this. So, we talk a lot about your content is meant to grab attention, and then it's your job to convert that attention to a lead. One thing I'll say is definitely don't rely on people reaching out to you. And I know that you would advocate for that as well, right? Because if we just rely on that, then it's not truly in our control. And you mentioned being creative, and a couple creative things that we've done, both in our business and obviously for our students as well, is free resources. So what I mean by that, pop on your story like, hey, I'll use water as an example. Hey, I have a free resource on how to get more hydrated. Reach out and DM me the word water, and we'll send you the free resource. Right? Think of ways, creative ways, where people have to reach out to you to receive the free value, and those are very, very easy conversation starters. Do you have any, like, I don't even want to call them tripwires, but do you have anything like that?
Dude, I have so many tips for this, but I'll give you the top few that I use. So one is like the 2 to 3 minute unlisted YouTube video, kind of like what you mentioned with like DM me this word and I'll give you the free resource. Um, Another thing that we personally do is like our community calls. So we'll actually have people like drop their emails in a box and that prompts us to reach out to them. Also, we'll just welcome people to our page to then go ahead and actually redirect them to one of the free resources that we have. I can't express this enough. I think one of the ways that I built up a majority of like my email list, Facebook group, and like getting people for DM outreach came down to like running free challenges and opt-ins. Those are great options. An opt-in is going to be like, for us, we have a free flexible dieting guide, a recipe guide, just a few things that kind of get people excited. And you know, it's super easy to just get them excited about those things. Like you said, Chad, it's as simple as like drop me the word, you know, whatever the word is, they're relevant to the resource you're giving them. And it's really easy to get people in the door doing things like that. Um, so yeah, I think those would be my top ones for sure.
100%. And you see every coach doing question boxes now, right? Polls, quizzes, all of those interactive styles of content are great for DM outreach because it breaks the ice. And that's, most people have, some fears around DM outreach because they're afraid to break the ice or they don't know how to break the ice. But quite honestly, the platform does it for you. You just have to use the features and that will do it for you. But couple of wrap up questions here. And these are like interesting questions that I literally just thought of. But what are people sleeping on nowadays in terms of content? Like, what's the thing that you're doing that you would consider being underrated?
So in terms of, I think being underrated is, I think it's not even about the feed post. I think it's so underrated how much selling happens in the Instagram story. Like more selling, and I think 95, I would say 95% of my selling comes down to being on your story and always showing up. It should be an everyday thing. Like even if you take one day off a week, cool, that's sick, run polls that day. That's what you need to do. Like you need to have something up. I think a lot of like the whole balance mindset has gotten crossed in like our space, and like to be honest with you, like you need to be showing up, and that's just my mindset and philosophy. So yeah, so stories 110%. I think personally, and I don't want to say this is underrated, I think it's definitely coming up, but like one, use reels, but stop with the whole pointing thing the whole time. Like I can't with it, like I can't personally. Reels I think are beautiful to use for personality. I think that is the thing that is underrated the most, is like, stop using the reels where it's that awkward posting, like the awkward pointing stuff. Because personally, in my opinion, I can't watch them, and I'm just being super honest. But um, I can get lost in the sauce with reels that are hilarious for like hours. I think it's great. So those I think are extremely underrated for the wrong reasons anyway. I think they need to be used more properly in our space. Um, and then last but not least is finding the unique thing that you specifically or specifically resonates with your ideal client the most. I found for me, which I was very surprised about, was like form fix videos actually worked super well. And now I noticed they're also starting to become more of a trend too. It's like, a few people do it and it kind of takes off, but it's finding something that's a little bit more unique. It could be more of like an instructional video rather than like a form fix video. But just finding that unique thing. I think I have 2 registered dietitians who work on FTF for our assistant coach team. And they both do really well with like infographics because they're so educated, and that's how they can get their point across. So finding the unique thing that like with you, I think just works the best.
Dude, 100%. Something unique that I've been doing is Q&As on an infographic. I really love Q&As. It's like how I answer questions best is like direct questions. So I'll just do Q like in the question, and then I'll just do my answer right down below. But like you said, it's all about being creative. It's all about how can you stand out and separate yourself. All right. Other fun questions for you. TikTok Clubhouse thoughts.
No, okay. Personally, okay, so I actually have a few clients that I work with very closely on TikTok. So here's my take on TikTok. I personally suck at TikTok. So that's me. I think I could be hilarious on the app. I just need to delegate the time to actually create those. With TikTok, here are some tips. All the clients I work with very closely, 2 posts a day, like key, which for me is the thing that I'm like, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
2 a day is like typical. Conversion rates, if you go viral, you need a messenger, hands down, 110%. You will get like 500 messages a day. It's insane. I have a few clients that's happening to, so we're actually creating subscription sites because you need to have some kind of downsell to then convert them to a hire, is what we're finding. You'll get the oddball. I mean, you'll definitely get a few of one-to-ones, but we're finding
It's a younger audience.
yeah,
Yeah.
subscription sites just tend to work well, downsells work well, and then nurture them into eventually being one-to-ones. You have the potential to just absolutely take off on TikTok. I watched one of my assistant coaches for business. Her assistant coach does pre and postnatal, and she ended up going from like 2,000 to 60,000 followers in a week, and it was
Dude.
absolutely insane. So
That's how oh, sorry to interrupt. I don't know if you know one of Caitlin's more recent coaches, Sam Taylor. Same exact thing. She's at like 69,000 followers, like straight TikTok. I'm just like, what the heck?
So I think there's so much potential for TikTok. I don't think it's too late to ride the wave. I told myself a year ago that it's too late, and I regret myself telling myself that. I still don't think it's too late. I think it's just going to keep growing. I don't know when they're going to monetize it. That's my only concern, like most apps do. That's
Always.
my TikTok. Clubhouse is fun. I love Clubhouse. For me personally, I definitely do think it is a business coaching platform. I think if you are a fitness coach who wants to learn business, get on the platform. That's the biggest thing. Now, there is an up and coming surge of the health field. I don't necessarily see an up and coming surge of the fitness coaching space. So I don't see ideal clients for fitness coaches on that app. That's my biggest concern with like fitness coaches getting on the app.
Sorry, I have a follow-up
Oh,
question. I'm
go
getting
for it.
excited.
Yeah,
Uh,
go for it.
so Instagram basically took TikTok's thunder, created Reels. Do you
Mhm.
think they do the same thing with Clubhouse?
I was watching a Gary Vee not documentary, but video on this, and he was saying Clubhouse will soon be. This was his kind of like preface on it, but he says that Instagram will integrate something like that. He thinks, and I wouldn't doubt it for a second. The app is still Clubhouse. The app is still not super huge. I find myself on that app. The hard thing is if you want to become prestigious on that app, you need to make high-end connections and network to get into rooms, because I've been in rooms and it's really hard to get invited as speaker unless you know somebody on a personal level. And I think that's how you gain prestige. I think it would be amazing if they opened it up for Instagram though, because then more people will be sitting there. Sure.
Dude, it'd be fire. I'm waiting for the day. All right,
Yeah.
last question I got for you, another fun one. Where's the industry going for fitness coaching? Where do you predict it going? What's going to work? What's not going to work?
Yeah, this is such a good question. Wow. It's funny because with outreach nowadays, I look and I'm like, man, I find more fitness coaches than I do sometimes ideal clients for fitness. I think in terms of where we're headed, I think coaches need to start getting more educated. I think 100 bajillion% they're eventually going to regulate this space.
Oh,
Yeah, they're going to regulate the space. I don't know how soon, but people's health are at risk and in people's hands. And also not a risk, but also for the better as well. But I do think it'll be regulated. I really would ask a lot of coaches to focus on pouring more into their education. I think there's still so much room for growth. I don't think that the market is saturated. I seriously don't. I still think there are more people who need coaches than there are coaches out there. And there's always a next generation. So what I would like to see moving forth into the future is less cancel culture and more support. That's where I'm at.
God.
I'm so at that point where I'm like, can we start supporting the younger coaches in our space and
Yeah,
giving them the equal opportunity that older coaches had instead of telling them that they shouldn't be coaches? That's my personal opinion.
right there with you.
Yeah. So giving them that opportunity, and then I just see it continue to grow more than anything. I think another platform is going to be coming. I think it'll happen.
100%.
Yeah, just jumping on that when it gets here for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you on the regulation. I'm thinking 5 years. And I'm thinking not just the fact that coaches need to be educated, but I'm thinking like even regulating how we operate in business will probably be a thing as well, which is a little scary, but we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see how it plays out.
we'll see. Accumulate your wealth, man. Like,
Yeah. Well,
no.
dude, those are all the questions that I had for you. Quite honestly, I don't call myself a very good interviewer because I tend to interrupt people, but I think I did a pretty good job. So, yeah,
Thank
you crushed it per usual. But once again, thank you for coming on. If you guys are first time listeners, I always say if you enjoyed this, the only thing that I ask in return is, post on your story, tag me, let me know that you listened. You could do the same thing for Kendall as well. Kendall, where can people find you?
Yeah, so if you guys want to shoot me a DM, like I'm always down to chat. Thanks for the support always. Chad's amazing. So Chad, thanks for having me on here. If you guys want to check me out, you can just check me out on my main page. It's at fearstofit, FEARSTOFIT. And yeah.
We crushed it. That's it. Peace.